So last week, Thursday, there was a vote that was taking place at the General Assembly where a resolution was put forward, basically saying that Israel needed to remove its unlawful presence from three areas, namely, Joshua mentioned the one, the occupied Palestinian territories, actually Judea and Samaria, and then the second one is from Gaza. If you know your history and if you know the facts on the ground, what occupation, that just goes to show you how ridiculous this is. And then also East Jerusalem, which is not even a different place to Jerusalem, the city. It's just like a part of the city, right, that faces east. But Jerusalem, and particularly those not only who know their history, but that are Christians, we know that Jerusalem is the undivided eternal capital of Israel. And so the United Nations came together and they passed this resolution. Now, even though this resolution has zero binding effect, unfortunately, it gives substance to the accusations by people who want to then say, look, the United Nations, using international law and a body that is supposed to be a custodian of international law and human rights and various other things as it pertains to nations, look what they said. And because they said it, there has to be some sort of credibility there. But we know not only from recent history, but from years gone by, that the United Nations harbors anti-Semitism, but it also is very ineffective as it pertains to Africa and other regions where real human rights issues are at stake. I do want to say, as an African specifically, that I was very disappointed at the voting record that the African nations had at this particular conference. Of all the nations that voted no, so you had nations that just weren't present. Then you had, of the nations that were present, people that voted yes, people that voted no. I say people, I mean, of course, countries. And then people that abstained. Only one of the nations that said no was an African nation, and that was Malawi. I want to give a shout out to Malawi, to the leadership of Malawi. Malawi, a nation that has already stated that it is moving its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Of the nations that voted to abstain, right, they said that they're not going to participate. 7 of these nations were African, and I would like to actually go down the list of these nations: South Sudan, Rwanda, Liberia, Kenya, Cameroon, Ethiopia, as well as the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so, yes, whilst I personally, as a daughter of Africa, want to appreciate these nations for at least stepping back and not participating in this foolery that was taking place at the United Nations, it is time, African leaders, and it is time, African leaders to be, that we put our vote on the international stage where it matters and with our friend. It makes no sense when we recognize that Africa has got, or rather African nations, 84% of those nations in sub-Saharan Africa have got formal diplomatic relationships with Israel. So these nations recognize the fact that there is a benefit to having a relationship with Israel that benefits its people. But that when it matters most, when Israel is being vilified, right, and demonized on the international stage, libels put against Israel, and these resolutions are put forward, and then people need to vote their hands in order to speak truth to power as it pertains to Israel. African nations, these very African nations that have got these relations with Israel, they're like, oh, thank you for all that you do for us, but actually, no, we're not going to be there to support you, and we need to do better. As Africans, we need to do better.